Hey friends, welcome back to Fantasy Awash. Today I am going to be doing a review for Eye of the World, which is book 1 of the Wheel of Time series. Now, I know what you're thinking, and that is, thank goodness there's another Wheel of Time review on BookTube. And to that I say, except today we are going to not only be talking about the non-spoilery review and the things that didn't work for me in this book, but we're going to be talking about whether or not the Eye of the World and Wheel of Time as a whole is an original idea and whether or not that matters. Let's jump in. The Eye of the World is a book written by Robert Jordan. It is the first book of the Wheel of Time series. Wheel of Time is beloved on BookTube. It is a mega epic. It is one of these stories that is 14 books long. It's a commitment for the reader. One of these things that is sadly famous with this series is that while it was started by Robert Jordan, he sadly passed away before its culmination, and it was finished by Brandon Sanderson. A lot of people like the Sanderson ending, but a lot of people don't like the Sanderson ending, so it's a bit contentious and controversial. Now, the Eye of the World itself is a story that centers on something called the Dragon Reborn and the Wheel of Time. So essentially that means that everything that has happened before and will happen again. It is a very cyclical world. The dragon, or the Dragon Reborn, is our hero of this story, and it is his journey and destiny to fight the Dark One. In this narrative, the dragon is always a man, but women are capable of possessing this magical ability called the Source, touching the Source, and they can weave magic to do specific things, and they are called Aes Sedai. The story begins in a small town called the Two Rivers, where we have an Aes Sedai emerge, and she realizes that something is going on in this little village where nothing usually happens. And as the story progresses, it's centered around a few central characters who are discovering their abilities and how they are involved with the greater plot of the dragon being reborn. It is something that is interesting. It pulls in the reader, or it can. It is long. Sometimes it is derivative, but that is still okay for most readers. But I want to talk about the things that didn't really work for me in this story. So we are now going to be talking more about spoilers. So if you want to read The Eye of the World at some point and don't want to be spoiled, I suggest you stop watching now. There are a couple main things that really didn't work for me in this story, and all in all, it's mostly that the way Jordan writes female characters, and specifically Nynaeve. Nynaeve, to me, was so grating. She frustrated me. I found her to be a petulant child most of the time. Her reactions were, because you want me to do something, I'm not going to do it. It felt like Jordan had never really encountered a strong woman and didn't really know how to write her. It just didn't make sense in the greater schema of the story. Like, we have a strong character with Moraine. She's not fallible. She is very determined in her purpose, in her path, but she's not really the central character. And more so the central characters that are women, I find, that come in and out of the story because they're more entwined with Rand, are Egwene and Nynaeve. Egwene is, I think, supposed to be perceived as a strong female character, but she really doesn't come across that way. I find that she's rather passive. She kind of just goes with the flow. She's jealous a lot of the time. It's kind of taking the worst traits of women and highlighting them on a large scale. But Nynaeve, for me, really just, I had a really hard time with Nynaeve, and I feel like I'm going to have a hard time with her going forward in this series. I asked on my Instagram as to whether or not people thought she was a terrible character, and unanimously people said no. So I don't know if it's that I'm in the minority of this, but it's just not something that I found to be compelling for your character. And that leads me to my major second issue, is her relationship with Lan. It comes out of nowhere. And we see that once she discovers he's a king or a prince and he's basically given that up to be a warder, now he's endearing to her. What? And then he feels a reciprocation of feelings and he's envious of the man that's going to end up with her. Like, absolutely not. Land was a really interesting character until that moment. Like, that ruins Land. You do not need to have them be in a relationship. If you want to put them in a relationship, that's fine. But it's something that really needs to be further developed and not something that kind of just happens in the blink of an eye, because that's what it felt like. And then all of a sudden, it's just there. Like, no, that does not work for me at all. My other major issue that I had with this book is that things felt too repetitive. And I understand that the journey from Two Rivers to Camelin is supposed to be long and lengthy. My major issue with this is the number of dark friends that are encountered by Rand and Matt. To me, it would have been substantially more interesting had there been fewer dark friends, because it almost would have made it feel like, who can I trust, who can't I trust, versus, oh, we really shouldn't trust anybody because it seems that everybody and everywhere has dark friends, but we're still going to keep trusting people and doing the same things over and over and yet yielding the exact same results, which seems highly unwise and highly uneducated. And I understand that these are teenagers, but you'd think that they would get it into their heads that they shouldn't keep repeating the same things over and over. So I thought that that would have been definitely more intriguing had it been this element of mystery of there's way fewer dark friends, so who are they? Who can I trust? Who can't I trust? And it would have made it more on edge for Rand and for the reader, I feel like. So that's something I would have liked to have seen more of. Now we're going to talk about if the Wheel of Time is too similar to Lord of the Rings, because that was a complaint that I was told quite a bit while reading this book. Personally, for me, I want to preface this and say that I didn't feel that the two were too similar. I do think that there are some overlapping themes, such as the epic scope of each world. We see that Jordan really develops his world in a way that I appreciated. There's a detailed map at the beginning, which I always love. Each place is kind of unique. People have particular accents, descriptors, histories. This is something that I thought Jordan did really well. And I definitely feel that that is something that could also be Tolkien-esque. I feel like I'm in a unique position to kind of discuss this because in this past month, I read The Eye of the World and Fellowship of the Ring. So I feel like I have both of them fresh enough in my mind to say whether or not I feel that too much of the story was too similar. In addition, we have the hero's journey, which is something that has been prevalent in myth and fantasy since its inception. If you want to hear more about that, you can go and watch my video on the Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's oldest fantasy story. I will link that here for you. But this is something that is so prevalent and so common in almost every story that I don't see how exactly this could be dictated as being a mirroring issue or a copying issue. They have magical creatures and they share themes of good and evil. And to discuss the themes of good and evil, I really think we then need to talk about whether or not the Wheel of Time is an original story and whether or not that matters, because the Lord of the Rings technically factors into this discussion too. So let's jump into that. In The Eye of the World and in every subsequent book of the Wheel of Time, there is a saying that says the wheel weaves as the wheel wills. And the wheel is the symbol for this series. It's usually three wheels. Well, there's one wheel and then there's a snake with its tail in its mouth forming another circle type thing. But the wheel is a symbol that actually dates back to Hinduism. And it is very similar in the way that it is portrayed for the Wheel of Time and the way that it is portrayed for Hinduism. Now in Hinduism, the wheel represents the cosmic cycle and it represents Dharma. The cosmic cycle is the creation, preservation, and dissolution of the world. And this is something that is very prevalent in the Wheel of Time. It's that each age is created, it lasts for a certain amount of time, and then it dissolves at the end. So this is an idea that is straight up taken from Hinduism. For Dharma, the wheel is associated with morals and duties that each person has to do and uphold in order to affect their karma. This is the principal law of cause and effect, in that what you do that is good will benefit you in probably your next life, aka the next age. And if you do not so great things, it will not benefit you in your next life. The wheel of life in Hinduism is also something else that is the cycle of samsara. It is the process of birth, death, and rebirth. And this is kind of how the ages happen in the Wheel of Time. So again, these really aren't original ideas or concepts. And the next group of unoriginal ideas that we're going to talk about is Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism is an ancient religion that comes from ancient Persia. Its main core is that it is light versus darkness. And this is the essential core of the Wheel of Time. It is also, you could argue, very central to the core of the Lord of the Rings, because you have the darkness of Mordor, or in the Wheel of Time, you have the darkness of the Dark One, and you have the light, which are the Aes Sedai, or the Source being used in a good way. And in the Lord of the Rings, you have light reference in things like the Silmarils and other elements of the story, or just being good is the antithesis of the darkness. So this is really interesting because, again, these ideas are not original ideas whatsoever. In Zoroastrianism, you have two deity-like figures. You have Ahura Mazda and Ahriman, and these two beings are at constant odds with each other, and they are symbols of darkness and light. One is a symbol of goodness, peace, tranquility. The other is a symbol of darkness and chaos, and they are in a constant struggle with one another for supremacy. Your actions can help dictate which one will win. However, there is constantly the cosmic struggle between the two of them. Now, where does fantasy come from if not myth, story, religion? Every single story, for the most part, that you've read is inspired by something else. So I feel like this is not a bad thing. I do think that people can take it to the extreme, in which people think that Tolkien is responsible for all these ideologies and themes, but he simply isn't. Tolkien himself took from Hinduism and Asian lore with the dragons and everything else in the Lord of the Rings, the darkness, the light. These are not original ideas, nor are they original for the Wheel of Time. However, what is unique about them are the approaches that Tolkien and Jordan applied to these things and stories. And I think because of that, it is okay. We have to, of course, factor in cultural appropriation and where we think we can draw the line with certain things. But I think they probably should have acknowledged these things when they were writing their stories and said, hey, by the way, I got these themes and ideas from X, Y, and Z. If going forward, we are transparent with these things, it might be easier for more audiences to feel more comfortable consuming this literature. But all in all, I don't think it's a bad thing that we're inspired from different cultures, ideas, religion, myths, histories, and we incorporate them and we create new amazing worlds and stories from those bases. Now, the last thing I want to discuss is the show adaptation on Amazon, because the season 2 trailer dropped today. I am hoping to get books 2 and 3 done of Wheel of Time prior to the show's release. I am not overly optimistic. I had not read, obviously, The Eye of the World prior to watching season 1. I will say I had tried reading The Eye of the World twice. However, life got in the way and grad school got in the way. And then I said at some point I'll get back to this, and now I have. But my husband had read all of the books, and he was kind of filling me in on the things that were different from the books. And then I found Bookborn that way. But this is something that I am hoping to do going forward, is be able to see the differences between the show and the book. I have to say that there were few things that I found that the show did better than the book, but the main thing that I liked better in the show was the fact that they condensed the Dark Friends. I thought that that was a really important thing. So all in all, I am happy to go forward with the series, and I'm curious to see where the show is going to go going forward. Let me know in the comments below if you know of any stories that are direct adaptations or you feel are a copy of something, and whether or not you like that, if it's an inspiration or if you think artists should try to come up with their own new things, new works, because let's be real, how many new fresh story ideas are there left in the world? There was a really great discussion on, I think it was SPFBO, where Bookborn hosted it, and they discussed if any stories are original or our own anymore, and I'm going to try to find that and link that in the description below, because it is a conversation worth watching. I thought it was really interesting and intriguing. I think that we should pay homage to the places that we are getting our inspiration from. But if you can create a new world with new ideas and run with it, then go for it. I did enjoy Eye of the World. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. For me, it had some issues, primarily, like I said, the way that female characters were written. I really didn't love that. And I found that the dark friends and repetitive nature of the first book were a little much. I know that there is a lot of repetitiveness in this series because it is so long and it is a bit of a slog. I am committing to this series in audiobook format only, and I'm wondering if that's going to be able to help me through this journey. If I find that I'm losing interest, I will give up, and that will just be what it's going to be. So let me know in the comments below if you have read Eye of the World, if you agree with any of my assessments, if you knew any of the histories or backgrounds or myths that could have influenced Robert Jordan or Tolkien. I always want to hear about these things. If you would like to help support my channel, you can always hit like and subscribe. And if you would like to find me on Instagram where we can talk about anything book related or cats, you can find me at Fantasy Awash. And as always, I will see you next time. Bye. Zoroastrianism, Ahura Mazda and Ahuramazda and Ahuran